Today's lesson we are now on to eyewitness testimony. Now this will be this week's theme and it'll follow on a little bit next week as well. We're nearly finished. This is the last sort of subtopic that we need to do in memory, and for this lesson you'll need, however you're writing your notes, you'll need a little bit of a scrap piece of paper, something like that. In our introduction there's a few things to do. This is my favourite topic and I am absolutely gutted that I am not teaching it to you face to face. But I've tried to incorporate as many activities as I would usually do with you at the start of this. So there's just a few quick questions and a few quick things that you need to try and think about and write down a little bit about. So, first thing I want you to do is think about your memory, and I want you to make a list of what type of things will influence your memory. They might improve it or they might make it worse. So what type of things might change over time, or what things might happen for you to have a change in your memory? Just note a couple down for me. The suggestions I've got, and the main ones to think are stress, it could increase or decrease. Your age, a very young child can't remember a lot, but as you get much older you'll struggle with things in your memory. The type of thing that is trying to be remembered, so if something is very difficult, or if you're trying to remember a lot of information at one time about a subject that you're not sure of, you might not be able to remember it. Interference, so mixing things up. Your emotional state at the time, if you are very upset you might not remember, or if you're very angry you might not remember certain things. And finally, language. So what type of language is used, which is things like leading questions, and that is going to be the focus of the first part of our lesson today. So leading questions and language is our focus for now. We will look at emotional states as well over the week. So, another few questions for you to get asked. Write down your answer just very quickly. How frequently do you get headaches in a week? Once, twice, 3 times? Give it a number. When people were asked how frequently they got headaches, they reported on average 2.2 headaches per week. But if you were asked how occasionally you got headaches, the average was 0.7. So changing that one word can change someone's response quite dramatically. Same again. Think about the basketball player with the ball here in this photo. How short is that basketball player? Feet and inches or centimetres doesn't matter. Now this was an American study, so it is in a little bit of weird terms for us, but if people were asked how tall he was, they gave an average of 79 inches. If they were asked how short he was, the average was 69 inches. So it's the exact same person, just one word changes. There is over 10 inches difference, nearly a foot. So that one word can change it dramatically. Now the issue with that is if you're reporting a crime. So if you are asked specific leading questions, which these are all examples of, they might change how you report a crime, which obviously has some bad implications for the criminal justice system. So leading questions need to be investigated quite a lot. Next thing we need to do, just another little activity. Watch what happens next. Would you make a good eyewitness? So I'm going to show you something and ask you a few questions. So question number 1, who robbed the phone? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 or 9. Make your decision. Who robbed the phone? It was number 3. Did you get it right? Did you report someone else? Next thing, question. Which vehicle was in the incident? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 or 9. The answer was number 9. Now have a think about, did you just get the shape of the car right? Did you get the colour right if you guessed something other than number 9? And what issues might that have if you reported it being something else? So if you were a witness to a crime and you said the car was red and actually it's silver, that could have some implications for who was looked at and what happened afterwards. So these are all things that need to be investigated in eyewitness memory. It's quite important. The majority of evidence, yes, fingerprints are collected, blood samples, things like that from a scene, but a lot of the information gathered is if there are any witnesses, and it's important that these are accurate. So leading questions, now they're not allowed so much in an interview. Leading questions don't happen, and we have reasoning for it, and that's what we're going to learn about today. We have a lot of post-event discussions, leading questions, misleading information generally can change someone's witness statement, so we need to investigate it in a lot more detail. So key terms that you need to get down then: eyewitness testimony, which is our focus for the week, the ability to remember the details of events such as accidents or crimes which they have observed. Eyewitness testimony can be affected by many factors, including misleading information, leading questions, and anxiety levels, all of which is our focus for this week. Other definitions: misleading information is incorrect information given to the witness after the event. This can be in many forms, like post-event discussion or leading questions. So whenever you're asked about misleading information, it doesn't just mean leading questions, it also means post-event discussion. Make sure you know that. We're going to do leading questions first, and then we will do post-event discussion today as well. And then leading questions definition: a question which prompts a desired response by the way in which it is phrased. This has a negative effect on memory. So with that one word difference, like those two questions I asked you at the start of this lesson, they are leading questions that change your memory. So have a negative effect because they have changed the accuracy. So leading questions is what we are looking at first. Now there is one big key study for this, and there is a follow-up as well. So you've got Loftus and Palmer number 1, Loftus and Palmer number 2. I'm going to send you round a summary sheet that you can type or write in any key studies. It's just a template. It's up to you if you want to use it or not. But remember, there are a few key studies across the papers that we have done already across this year. So make sure you do know what they are, you know how to remember them more specifically. So, Loftus and Palmer. So this is experiment number 1. And the research method is a lab experiment using an independent group's design. They used 45 American students. Now, we don't even know the procedure yet, and this gives us a lot of evaluation to be thinking about. So lab experiment, pros and cons of that. Independent groups, what the pros and cons of that are. And using 45 American students, what issues might we have there. Now, the actual procedure: all participants viewed the same 7 video clips of car accidents that were originally made as part of a driver safety film. 3 were real, 4 of them were staged. The staged crashes were used to show what can happen to humans when the cars collide at different speeds. And then participants were asked to give an account of the accident. As part of this, they were asked a series of questions. And one of those was a critical question. We weren't really interested in what they answered to the other questions. It was just this one question that we were assessing, and this is the critical question. Now, each of the participants, they were split into 5 groups of 9, and each little group was given a different verb in this question. Well, everything else about the question was the same. So the basics of the question were about how fast were the cars going when they, and then each individual group had a different verb, each other. And these 5 verbs were hit, collided, smashed, contacted, and bumped. They weren't asked all of those, they were just asked one. So the first group, about how fast were the cars going when they hit each other. Then the second group, about how fast were the cars going when they collided each other, and so on. So that's what makes it an independent group's design. So that's our procedure. So their estimations were given in miles per hour, and an average was made of each of those verbs. So the highest speed was given for the verb smashed, 40.8 miles per hour. The lowest was given for about how fast were the cars travelling when they contacted each other, that was 31.8 miles per hour. Remember here that they have all watched the same video clips. So these are your results that you need to have down. We need to definitely make sure we can remember smashed and contacted. I'd go for all of them as much as you can, but the highest and the lowest, best way to go if you are struggling. And what do these results suggest? Why do you think that changed? So there are a few options as to why there was such a dramatic difference in the miles per hour. And Loftus and Palmer didn't really know which one had had an effect. That's why they did a follow-up study. But there are two possible explanations. The first one is response bias. So it could have been that it's difficult to estimate speed accurately, so more serious sounding verb made people estimate higher. So smashed sounds quite violent. The participants responded higher miles per hour because of that. They didn't actually believe it, but they found it quite difficult to do. Or they actually had a change in memory. A more serious sounding verb caused them to really believe that the cars were travelling much quicker. Those were the two suggestions that Loftus and Palmer came up with, and they had to do a follow-up study to find out a little bit more, but those are the two possible explanations. Now it's up to you to decide at the minute which of these explanations do you think is the most plausible and why. Now I'd just suggest thinking about students. I know they're American students, but think about how many people in your class can drive. If I asked you to do that, would you find it difficult or not? So that's a bit of an issue that we might come across. So it was either the response bias, you need to get that definition down, wording cannot change actual memories, it just changes the answer, or substitution, so the wording of the leading question actually changes a memory. So those were the two options essentially as to why there was such a big difference. So make sure you've got those down. Now we've got experiment number 2, very similar, but we need to make sure we know the difference between the two. So the reason why they did it is because if memory had really changed subjects, they were likely to falsely report other details that didn't really happen. So this was a little bit of a follow-up to see what was going on. So now we've got 150 different students. They didn't use the same 45 and add to it. These are all completely different students, divided equally into 3 groups. So another independent groups design. So 50 in 1, 50 in 2, 50 in the control. Procedure, all of them viewed the same 1-minute film showing multiple car crashes. They were then given a questionnaire which asked them to describe the accident and answer a set of questions. This set of questions included a critical question. So Group 1, the first 50, were asked about how fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other. Group 2, about how fast were the cars going when they hit each other. And Group 3 did not have a question about speed. This was the control group. They were just asked all of the other questions apart from the critical one about speed. A little bit more procedure, so this isn't quite all of it. A week later, all of the participants, without watching the film again, completed another questionnaire, and it contained a further critical question. Did you see any broken glass? Yes or no? So that's all of the procedure. A week after, they were asked an additional question is all we need to add on. But there was no broken glass in the original film. So technically speaking, they should have all answered no. So here are our results for it. So the smashed is Group 1. So 16 of those said they had seen broken glass. 34 of them said they hadn't. So these 34 were correct. Group 2 was hit. 7 of those said yes. 43 said no. And in the control, 6 of them said yes. 44 of them said no. Now, more participants in the smash condition than either the hit or the control condition reported seeing broken glass. But overall, the majority of participants in each group correctly recalled that they hadn't seen any. So those are the results that we got. We've got to try and think about why each of these results might have happened. So we've got our control group. They weren't asked anything about speed, and they were pretty similar to the hit group. Now, generally speaking, these 6 here might have said yes because of their schema. If you have seen a car crash, there is always, in my experience anyway, some glass somewhere from the impact. That's a schema controlling their behaviour, controlling their response. So that's something we need to make sure we think about. So do these findings support substitution? So the wording of a leading question actually changed the memory. Do they support that? We can argue both sides. Loftus and Palmer say yes, so in reality the answer is yes. Because those who had a more serious verb believed that they had seen glass when they hadn't, as you would expect at a serious incident. But you could also counter-argue that with no, because still the majority overall said no, suggesting that those who said yes might have been acting on a response bias. There is both sides, as always, in psychology. But we need to make sure that we know that Loftus and Palmer said that this does support substitution, but you can counter-argue it. So yes is the answer for now, in short, but we're psychologists, we need to argue everything that we possibly can. So those are the two studies by Loftus and Palmer. The first one with 45 students with the 5 critical verbs, the second one with 150 students with did you see any broken glass being one of the critical questions. So make sure you know 2 different studies linking to the same thing. So experiment 2 was a follow-up. Not quite finished yet. We have got one more study to do, and that is about post-event discussion. Now, post-event discussion as a definition is when there is more than one witness to an incident and they discuss what they have seen with the person who they are with. This may alter the accuracy of memory and eyewitness testimony. Now, if it is a serious incident and the police are on scene pretty quickly and they want to interview you quite immediately, they will separate you. So they won't interview 2 people together, they won't keep you together if they can, because of this post-event discussion and what happens after that. So it's not possible to completely eliminate it, because if you're going to the shops with your mum and you see an incident, you're going to speak to your mum about it. What's happened there? Did you see this? It's natural. But nowadays it is reduced as much as possible. So we've got a study for it, and this is by GABBERT in 2003. And they filmed a variety of videos of a crime but from all different angles, meaning that each participant saw something slightly different. So an example, one person could see a title of the book that a young woman was carrying, but nobody else could. Participants only saw one variation of the video, and some participants were allowed to discuss what they had seen before being tested for recall. In the other condition, which is the control, participants were not allowed to discuss the information. In the findings, 71% of participants mistakenly recalled aspects of the video that they couldn't see. In the control group, which was no discussion, no mistakes were made. So 71% of participants mistakenly recalled aspects that they didn't see. And the conclusions, witnesses will go along with one another to gain approval or because they genuinely believe that the other witness is correct and that they could be wrong. Now, where have we seen these type of things before? What terms do they link to? Have a little bit of a think. These link to normative social influence and informational social influence. Now, you could mention that in an exam question, these link to, because, but this is a study that you need to try and link in as much as you can. The common mistake is that when asked about misleading information, students don't talk about post-event discussion. They just go straight into the leading questions. So try and make sure you know GABBERT in as much detail as well. Now, that's all we're going to do for today. We've done 3 big studies. I'm not going to do the evaluation right now. But as a bit of a summary, we have got misleading information that's split into 2 parts, leading questions and post-event discussion. Leading questions, you have got Loftus and Palmer study number 1, 45 students, 5 critical questions. Loftus and Palmer study number 2, 150 students, 2 critical questions compared to a control group. And then post-event discussion, you've got GABBERT, inaccurate information after discussion versus a no discussion control group. We've done a lot today. I want you to revise it, look over, make sure you are comfortable with this before we move on to the second lesson when we will be doing evaluation and a little bit of exam practice on it. So make sure you have got as much information as you can, as much detail as you can, listen to this video as many times as you need to, but you need to make sure you are fully comfortable with these studies. So see you next lesson. Hopefully we will all be very, very happy and comfortable with the studies we've done today.